So, Stu, brilliant to have you on Arcade Attack. Really is an honour to have you. I'm a massive fan of the games you've worked on. So thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, no worries. Oh, that's very nice of you to say. Oh, it's nice when people contact you after the years of playing your stuff, and they say they like it. So it's all those extra hours I worked are certainly worth it.
Well, I'm a huge Amiga fan, and whenever I saw Sensible Soccer on a box, I knew there was quality. So the reputation was huge, 100%.
Yeah. I think. I mean, I'm not still am a big fan of the Amiga, but I mean, at the time, it really was, like this amazing bit of kit.
Yeah.
So as a game developer, you just try and get the most out of the machine. I think that proves that what we achieved on it speaks for itself. But it is a great machine. I actually really miss the Amiga. I know you can play it now and you can do, but I do miss it because it not just for the actual machine, but for what it represented at the time. It was such an innovative machine.
100%. Yeah, I can't deny that. Can we rewind the clock a little bit, if that's right, Stu? We're talking about the Amiga. Trust me, we'll get to the Amiga. What do you remember your earliest memories of gaming when you were growing up, and have you got any really fond memories?
I do actually. I grew up in the 80s, so I was born in 1969. So I was around at school when the 8-bit computers were really sort of coming into the market. And I had those little LCD. Well, they weren't LCD. They were those little handhelds, like the Game and Watches, and some of those little sort of glowy ones, like Astro Wars. What's the other one? There was like some Invaders now. I remember those used to go to Tandies, so they were like some of the earliest things, as well as the arcades at the time, like Space Invaders, Galaxians, Pac-Man, all the old classics.
Yeah.
But one of the memories I have got is when the Spectrum had come out, and where I went to school, we had like a science block, and you could walk sort of past it, and you would see the teachers and they had a Spectrum in the science block, and you'd see them at lunchtime all huddled around a Spectrum playing games.
Yeah.
And in my school, we didn't have Spectrums, we had BBC Micros.
Yeah.
So this was like, hang on a minute, how come they get the call machine to play games on, and the BBC Micros, which is a cool machine, there's never any games on it because they didn't let us have games on in school. So that was one of as far as like the games industry stuff goes, that's probably one of the earliest memories I've got of actually video games at the time being played. But I say I grew up in the 80s, so it was really all the old classic arcade machines were probably where the center of my attention at the time, because they were just like mind blowing. At the time, still these like cathode ray tube screens glowing in the dark, and you'd be all huddled around with your mates, and putting your 10p's in.
Yeah.
And you couldn't do that at home. You couldn't do what you do now. You can come home and play them on an emulator or play them on your computer or a console. It was like that was it. So it's good times, actually, very good. I actually look back now, I think I was quite fortunate to have been around at that time to see the kind of birth of it all, and to be around where all these technologies being created, and you're witnessing it for the first time. It's quite nice to look back on that and think, I was around at that to see it when it came in. So it's good.
That's a good point. Yeah, very good. I'd love to know how you first got the opportunity to work in the industry, though. And do you remember the first game you ever worked on?
How did I get into the industry? Well, it was a bit of a weird one, actually, because I kind of got in and then got out. I did some programming on the 64. I did do a little bit on the VIC-20, but not a lot. It's like a bit of basic. And I got a Commodore 128, but I only used really 64 mode. And I started sort of coding on that. And I was getting all my core routines running, like scrolling and sprites and all that sort of stuff. I wasn't very good. I was okay. And the Shoot 'em Up construction kit come out, and it's like, it's just fate, isn't it? It's just bizarre. And I thought, I'll give it a go. And I originally just tried it out just to profile a few ideas in my head to see if I can get things moving. And I just sold I created this game called Battle Ball, and I just sold it to I think it's Powerhouse, was a really dodgy budget label. And they took it and they paid me just before they went under. So I was really fortunate. So I got the money from that. And that was my first kind of little step into the industry. And then they went under, and that was it. But thankfully, I managed to bank the check before they disappeared. And the money I used for that, I put towards buying an Amiga 1000, which had literally only just come out.
Oh, wow.
And I was working. I used to work for the British Rail at the time. I was a technician on the railways. Yeah, it's just crazy, you know.
It's pretty crazy, actually.
It is really crazy. I was a technician, so and so I would do my normal shift work and come home, and I'm not living at home with my parents. I was only like a teenager, and I'd got this Amiga 1000, and I had a friend of mine who'd had some games out on the 64, and you know, over the course of time, I'd got some graphics together on the 1000 and started to, you know, really get to use D-Paint. And my mate said to me, "Oh," he said, "Well, I've got someone I know, they're looking for an artist to do some graphics for some projects. You know, give us a disc and I'll pass it on." And that literally was it. You know, I mean, I did the rounds before. I'd gone around a lot of these London-based publishers with discs and given them out to everybody, but I didn't really have a lot of success. It was like, yeah, okay, we'll contact you and we'll contact you, because it was a bit of a closed-door situation. Because unless you've got something published, a lot of them probably, you know, say, "Oh, well, yeah, we'll get back to you." So it's like, well, how do you get something published, you know, to get through the door? I mean, a lot of my early work was okay, you know, it wasn't fantastic. But yeah, so I'd got this mate of mine, and he took the disc and he gave it to this publisher, and that publisher was Impressions, who basically gave me a break in the industry. And I did a handful of games for them, and the first one I did was an Amiga game called Renaissance 1, which was also released as, I think it was called Classic 4. And that was basically two versions of each game. You had Space Invaders, Galaxians, Centipede, and Asteroids. And we just did like a traditional version, which was based on the original arcades. And then I did another set of graphics, which was like a temporary version with like updated graphics. And that was it, you know, and that was my first published title, you know, that actually made it into retail, you know, and Battle Ball never made that on the 64 because I said it went under. So up until that point, I'd never had anything out there that was, you could go into a computer shop and buy.
Yeah, it must have been pretty crazy. Did you walk into a shop and see your game on the shelves?
I did. Yeah. It was wonderful. I mean, the feeling is just like no other, because you know, you bearing in mind there was no internet back then. There's nothing like that. You know, anything you saw was in print. So it was like your monthly computer magazines. And I mean, there was bi-weekly magazines. I think it was like, it wasn't Micromark. There was a couple that were coming out every 2 weeks, but they were black and white. So the only bit of information you'd get about games was in the monthly games press, like Computer Video Games, and all these sort of magazines. So going into a shop and then seeing a title that you'd worked on the shelf, and then flipping it over and seeing your screenshots on the back of your game, you think, wow, you know, it's brilliant. And that feeling never goes away, for me anyway. You know, it never goes away. Even, you know, I mean, nowadays you don't, you know, it's different, but you know, you see things in print, you know, stuff I've written or articles, or even on like websites. It's just nice to see that, you know, the stuff done is out there. It's great. It's really good.
Did you, a bit of a personal question, but did you get like commission for every game that was sold?
Yeah, I got royalties. I mean, I didn't get royalties on the initial ones I did with Impressions. And to be honest, I didn't really understand the number of sales that you would get to make the royalties. But I was paid okay for the work I did. But initially, it was mainly to get like some titles under my belt to build a bit of a portfolio, and then I can use that to progress further, and which is what I did. But I mean, if I could go back in time, I'd certainly be a bit more savvy with some of the business decisions I'd made, because the early titles, I don't think they sold big volumes, but I'm sure that I could have squeezed a few sort of bits of percentage out of them to pay me extra. You know,
I appreciate it. Good stuff. Was your next step Sensible Software then? Is that right? Or
it was, yes, I did.
How did that come about?
Well, I was talking about these computer magazines that come out every couple of weeks, and I for the life of me, I wish I could remember the magazine it was. I don't even think I've got it anymore. But there was an advert in the back of these magazine that had there was a bit in the back that had all developers, game developers, and publishers would advertise for staff. And they'd advertise for like games or artists, programs, etc. And I saw this little, I think it was like either a quarter-page ad or a half-page ad, and it was from Sensible Software. Now, bearing in mind, I was a big fan of their Commodore 64 stuff. So for me, it was like, wow, you know, Sensible are hiring. And I literally, I ummed and ahed and thought, oh, I don't know if I should send anything off. Or, they're not going to want me. This teenage kid from from Ilford in Essex. He's not going to. And I ummed and ahed, and I thought, do you know what? I've got nothing to lose. So I put a portfolio disc together, or what I thought was my best work at the time, sent it off, and lo and behold, I got a letter back asking me to go up for an interview. And I think I was shortlisted, to cut the story a bit short. I was shortlisted from 10 people they had on their hit list, and it was between me and this other guy. And I just beat him to the post with their score. Like, they'd scored all the graphics. And I just beat this other guy to the post with my, and I was like, wow. And John actually gave me the list. Like, I think he gave me the list. Yeah, I've actually got the list somewhere in a file of all the candidates that they had. I'm never going to show that, by the way.
Are there any big names on there? Is there?
I honestly can't remember. I honestly can't remember what the names. I only ever looked at it, I think, twice since I've had it. Once when it was given to me, and the second time I think years later when I was going through the boxes and archiving some of the stuff. But I've always said to myself, no, don't look at it. Because if I see somebody out there, I think, oh, I know that guy. It's like, oh, yeah, you could have had the job I had, and you might have changed the course of your history.
It's bizarre. I find it really it's like sliding doors, isn't it? But no, Stu, you deserve that. I'm sure you obviously worked really hard to get that position, but it is crazy, isn't it? How the world works, really.
Very much so. Very much so.
Oh man, sensible software. I mean, just as a fan, just as a punter who bought your games, I always got the impression that obviously the games you produced were amazing, high quality, but it always seemed like a sort of fun atmosphere or kind of rock and roll lifestyle. Is that a silly thing to say?
I would probably say the image was probably more rock and roll than the actual reality. It was fun. I mean, it really was an awful lot of fun to work there. And I've said many times, it is also very hard work. You don't just turn up and have a laugh and then go home. Often you turn up and you didn't go home. You'd end up working all night. And but we all had the same outlook on what we was trying to achieve. We knew that we had to get stuff out. We knew that we had to work to the best of our ability. And the bottom line is, why do something if you're not going to do your best? And I still use that approach today. Whatever I do, I always give it my best, even no matter what it is, whether it's a single set of sprites or whether it's like some concept art or writing or illustration, whatever it may be. Always give it 100%. Because it should never. So basically, at the time, we just had a great laugh, and I think that shows in the games. We had a laugh, but it was disciplined. It was a disciplined, system, and we all had to kind of discipline ourselves to get the work done, because ultimately you don't want to let your teammates down if you're dragging your heels.
Of course.
So if something needed to be done, you work through the night to get it done. So for instance, like with Cannon Fodder, if I knew that Jules, I don't know, was expecting some soldier sprites that were going to be swimming, and he was working on the code to make them swim in the water, and I hadn't done the graphics, I would know that tomorrow he wants those graphics. So I think, okay, well, I'll work tonight, get them done, and then they'll be ready for him tomorrow. And that way I know they're there for him. And then I would then, go and get some kit, and then when I come in, he'd have them in, and that's how it worked. So it worked right. It was great. It was really good environment.
Yeah, good stuff. What was the first game you worked on at Sensible Software then?
The first I was brought in to do Cannon Fodder. That was the first title I was brought in to do, but I didn't actually start working on it straight away. There was a lot of controversy at the time with Microsoft going down. So there was a lot of what was happening with Microsoft, and that threw the company right up in the air, because there was a possibility that Sensible would have actually gone under, because they deals they had with Microsoft were basically, that was it. It was over. So it was quite desperate for a short while. So I did. The first thing I did was a thing called SimBrick. I don't know if you remember the cover disc for SimBrick.
No, I don't. I'm afraid.
That was the If you Google or Bing it or search it somewhere, DuckDuckGo or whatever, you do SimBrick, you'll and it was literally a kind of a. We was taking the mick out of SimAnt that had come out.
I know SimAnt. Yeah.
Yeah, and the idea was that you just had to drop a brick on an ant, and then we called it SimBrick, and you just had this giant brick, and this hand would just walk up and down, and then you just click the button, and it would just release the brick and squash the ant, and that was it. That was my first. That's my first lot of graphics I ever did for Sensible.
Wow.
And I did that as an all-nighter because I was trying to impress. I thought, impress the guys here, let's do an all-nighter. I'm hardcore, me. I'm gonna do an all-nighter to prove I'm worthy. And so, well, I did, and that's what I did. So I did a full night, and it's like, wow. Did those? That was the first stuff I did. But I think the first product I did was Cannon Fodder. I'm not sure if we did the Megalomania after I started Cannon Fodder or before, because I did the conversion of Megalomania to the Mega Drive. I've got a feeling we did that just not long after we started Cannon Fodder. Because I joined Sensible when Megalomania was just being finished and WizKid had just been finished, so they were two titles that were just like in the final stages, and I joined the company then. So it was really good. It was really good.
Sensible Soccer and Cannon Fodder. Is it true they were kind of made with side by side, like almost two projects working closely together?
Yeah, I mean, we had the offices were, but we were basically, I can't get my words out. And let me just have a little drop of my lovely cup of tea here.
That's right.
Slurpy slurp. Because we were based in March in Cambridgeshire, and our offices were a big open plan office that was right next to the station. And so I had my desk in one corner, John had his desk, and then Jules had his desk, and then Chris Chapman and Chris Yates we all had our own little areas. So everything was developed in this one big office. So you had WizKid on one machine, you had Sensible Soccer starting on another machine, we had like Cannon Fodder starting on another one. So both Sensible Soccer and Cannon Fodder were developed at the same time, yes. Yeah. Although there's no overlap between the two in terms of technology or graphics or anything like that. They are totally separate. There might have been a few couple of borrowed routines from between Jules and Chipper. I know there was a bit of talk on certain things, but the code for both of those games are separate.
Wow, I kind of assumed like they have a kind of similar sort of art style, don't they? They call it the size of the characters and stuff. But fair enough. No, but brilliant. I assume you kind of used all your assets a little bit over it, but no, there you go.
No, I mean, the reason for having them small was purely, I wouldn't say by accident, because it is by design, but it's not by design to give ourselves a unique look. It wasn't say, hey, look, let's be known for tiny little sprites with lots of play area. The reason being is so you could see more of the play area. And because the resolution of an Amiga is like 320 by 240, you can't really do anything about that. You could go to high res mode, but then you lose your speed of the machine. So everything's done in 320, 240. So the only way to get more graphics on screen is to reduce the size of the sprites in terms of their pixel density, or pixel resolution. So that's what we did, and the same with Cannon Fodder. Sensible Soccer had that because they wanted to see more of the soccer pitch, and Cannon Fodder took the same approach because we wanted to see more of the play area when you're dragging your soldiers about. Yeah. And likewise, Megalomania. So I mean, it's a formula that kind of worked, but it wasn't. That we had, we created this look and we felt like we had to adhere to it. It was literally just down to the fact that that's what worked for those particular designs.
Oh no, fair enough. No, that's great. Yeah. I love Sensible Soccer. I have to say, if I knew how many hours I put into that game as a kid, it would be ridiculous. I mean, what was your exact role in the series? And I think, did you say you're not really a football fan? Is that fair? Or?
No, I'm not. I'm really not. And that's the funny thing is, I have a very, very small interest in football, if that, and that's usually the World Cup, or occasionally if West Ham are playing, and I'll glance over to see how well they're doing. But that's about it, So for me, working on a football game was just like, well, it's just another graphics for another game. I didn't do any of the graphics on the original Sensible Soccer. It's John's area. He did all the graphics design and everything on that, all the graphics for that. So that was, that was his stuff, and that's his art, and that's all his work. The only thing I did in terms of I did some of the stuff on Sensible World of Soccer. I did the crowd, and I did some of the menu graphics. So that was my involvement in that. And I did, I think I did the loading logo on the original Sensible Soccer, which is the little Sensible little sensible soccer.
Yeah.
Not the sensible, the little sensible logo that comes up, because John was doing one on his screen, and I was creating one for Cannon Fodder, just because I thought, well, because we used to, in the office, we used to have a great big sensible logo, which is a bit of art on the wall. It was massive. And I was drawing it, and I thought, oh, yeah, I'll do that in 16 colours, and I did that. And then John was doing one. I said, well, I've got one here. You can use that for Sensi Soccer. And I just used that in Sensi Soccer. But that's the only bit of art I did on the original game.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So yeah.
Did you play a lot in the office? I know there's obviously lots you have to do a lot of work, but do you have a lot of time playing the odd game with John and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, continuously. When I never really played Sensi Soccer a lot in the office because I was always doing other stuff. But the game itself, Sensi was getting it got loads of game time. I mean, people were playing it all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so damn good, because it was played to death. I mean, every day it was played to death. And if Chris was putting a new bit of code in, or he tweaked something, John would be there, he'd be testing it out, and then somebody else would have a go. And then we'd give feedback to it and say, well, how does that feel? And the whole process just went round and round and round and round and round until the whole game was finished and it was polished and playable to exactly how it felt right. It wasn't a case of sitting down with a list and saying, right, okay, we need to do this, 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 and this, and we'll have the perfect football game. It's a case of, right, try this out, right? Does that work? Yeah, it works, but maybe we'll tweak a little bit here or adjust that bit there, and you just keep doing that. And we use the same approach on Cannon Fodder. I mean, Cannon Fodder was exactly the same. You just played it and played it and played it. I mean, when we finished it, I mean, I couldn't play it for about a year. I couldn't go near it because I was sick of it. I was sick to death of the game. I couldn't look at it because every day, you're playing it and you're testing it, and it was just, and I really, really couldn't even look at it after it'd been released and Virgin had took the master discs. That was it. I thought, right, I'm done with it. I can't even do it now. I'm had enough.
Yeah. Well, both Cannon, don't get me wrong, Sensible Software before Cannon Fodder and Sensi were obviously still really respected, a really massive company. But those two games, correct me if I'm wrong, they just took it to another level. I mean, you were like the kings of Amiga for a good number of years. Is that a fair statement? It seemed that way to me, at least.
I don't know about that. I know. I'd like to think that we're proud of. I mean, certainly I'm proud of what I achieved there, and as a team, I don't think I could have wished for a better bunch of guys to work with. I think there was a lot of other developers who was good, and I think technically we tried to do the best we could with the machine, and I think that it had to be smooth, it had to feel smooth. I don't think that we sat on our arses and thought, oh, well, that'll do, just put it out. We never did that. We never did that. We always, even if it was a cover disc for a magazine, whether it was an Amiga Power or Amiga Format, one of these other magazines, whatever these magazines were, we always made sure that magazine had a decent cover disc. Even they were always top notch, because we cared passionately about what we were doing. And I think with something like the Amiga, it allowed you to create really, really cool games with some, if the hardware was so easy to get on with, it was such a lovely machine to work on. It could have been better. I mean, there's, the Amiga 500, it was good. I mean, when they brought out the 1200, it had better graphics. But for its time, it just let you do arcade stuff without, requiring a games console or a big, a serious bit of kit. It was there. It just did the job, and I loved it. It was great. So I certainly, to go back to the original point, I don't think I was aware that we would be looked at as these like megastar developers. I mean, I still don't think that now. I think we were good at what we did, and we took pride in what we did, and I think that shows in the games. So, but maybe I'm just too modest.
Well, don't get me wrong. Bitmap Brothers, Bullfrog. There's some other huge respected. But you're up there in my eyes. Definitely the Sensible Software team. It's amazing. That people are still playing Sensible Soccer today. They're great, they're doing tournaments all around the world. That still with the they're putting the new players in and so forth. But it's incredible, isn't it? Really,
it certainly is. I mean, I follow. I think there's a German website that does the Sensible Soccer League. I think it's a German guys who set that up.
Yeah.
I know there's a huge presence online of Sensible Soccer, and I think it's fantastic that people are actually taking the game, putting the new data in, and you've got all the current teams and players in there. I think that's fantastic, because it proves that you don't need to go out and buy FIFA 2019 or FIFA 2020 and spend like 50 or 60 quid on a game every year, and have loads of DLC. It's just you sit there with a group of mates, you can have a good game of Sensi Soccer, you can put the new team data in, you've got all your players, and it's great. And I've played it. I played it last year. I haven't played it for a while actually. And I played it last year with my son because he was asking me about it, and I said, "Yeah, game," and he liked it. He picked up straight away.
Yeah.
And I think that's the testament to it. You can just pick up and play it, but when you start to get into the control system and you start to how to bend the ball and do all the passing, and that's when it really starts to take shine, and it shows you how good that code is that runs behind it all. And it is such a playable game. So certainly, I'm not. It's the thing is, I'm saying that as not even as somebody who worked on it. I'm just like like everyone else who just played it as a punter, really, because I never worked on it. So for me, it was like, this is really cool, and I'm not into football. So for me to say that, it's like, that's right, because I don't play football games.
Yeah.
So.
Well, one game, Stu, that you obviously really were involved in is Cannon Fodder. I want to talk about that now, if that's all right.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, were you there from day one, or was it already in development, early stages? How did the idea come about? And do you have an idea how that?
When I answered that advert in that computer magazine, that was the advert for the development of Cannon Fodder, which I didn't know. So it was Jules and myself were employed at the same time, and we didn't know the project we was going to be working on until we'd actually started, and then we was told that, right, this is the idea we've got, and it was going to be this kind of like sort of lemmings with guns. I think it was told it was something. It was like lemmings with guns, and there's this one piece of paper with a few ideas on it, and that was how we started. And it was really down to just sitting down and coming up with some rough graphics. Jules would come up with some like code to get some soldiers moving around. We kind of had an idea of how we would do the terrain. Jules done this really cool system with the terrain, which I'd never seen before on a machine, where you could have like a bump, almost like a bump map on the actual graphics on the tiles, and and each tile could have a height, and I think there was you could have like 3 or 4 heights per tile, so you could have like a very rough sort of overlay on the terrain, which is why when you see them walking along, say an area of grass and there's a hole, they all dip down into the hole, because I went through and edit, and you can say, well, that's a hole, mark that as a hole, and then when they go into the water, you see them gradually getting deeper and deeper until they swim. And that that's just amazing. But all this stuff developed along the way. So I to be part of that from the beginning, you think, wow. And a lot of this stuff you forget over the years because you work so intensely at the time. When it's finished, you kind of move on to the next thing, and a lot of this stuff is stored in the in the archives of your brain. And then 20 odd years later, and you talk to people about it, you say, oh, I really like that game. You think, oh yeah, I remember that bit. I remember how we did that.
Yeah,
there's loads of stuff.
It's just little things. Like I think way that if birds fly over, you can shoot the birds down. Is that correct? I just thought the graphics were amazing as well. It popped out. It was so colourful, and even the sort of pint-sized soldiers had something about them. I mean, when we sorry, that's my phone. Just turned it off. Whoops. Sorry, Steve. When we put your sort of written review on our Twitter stream and Facebook, oh my words, everyone was going, "Oh, I felt bad when Stu died," or How does it feel? I mean, that these really small soldiers were still like really. You felt really guilty if they sort of died. It's absolutely crazy, isn't it?
Well, I mean, this is the really, really weird thing about the way the game changed for us when we was developing it, because we got to the point where we had all the little soldiers moving around, and we had these groups, because originally there wasn't groups. It was just like you had one single squad, and then I think John come up with the idea, or Chris come up. I think maybe John had come up with the idea of having them grouped, and so we put that in, and it was worked. And then we had these names, and we was going to have the names in there.
Yeah.
And so we put the names in, and that was like, okay, all of a sudden these are real people, and bearing in mind, it's easy to look back now when we've got the, machines like the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One, where you've got these almost photorealistic graphics where, blood and gore is in your face. It's like, motion capture, they're using real actors. But back then, there was none of that. It was like little tiny pixel characters. But you kind of attached an emotion to them because you're trying to protect that guy because he's got, he's made up through the ranks and he's got better firepower.
Yeah.
So you want to protect him. But once we put the heal screen in and we had the little recruits coming over and they're conscripted in and they go through the little door and then they die. And you think, hang on a minute, that guy, he's dead now. And you think, I feel sad because I've kept him in throughout for, 2 missions. He's survived 2 missions. He's done really well. And then he got shot by this little soldier who I didn't see, shot him from behind a bush somewhere. You think, and we actually did feel, I felt that when we got that in, I was like, bloody hell.
Yeah.
I didn't want him to die. He's one of my best soldiers and he's dead. And also I got all the little privates coming in who've had no experience in the game, and they're in there, and I've got to start from scratch again. So it was a really weird thing because I've never even thought that would happen when we did it. And John said this before, that it's kind of like you associate like a person with that little name, so therefore you kind of. You sort of you feel like a bit of grief for them in a very small amount because they're only pixels, but you do because you think, hang on, I've protected that guy all the way through the missions. It was a very, very strange thing, and it really transformed the feel of the game, almost overnight.
Brilliant. I think it's great. I mean, it just adds personality to the game, doesn't it? 100%.
That's right.
Is there any particular piece of art within the game in Cannon Fodder you're most proud of, or any bit of animation you put together or anything?
There's a couple actually. I did the parallax sections between missions. I'm really pleased with those. The later ones, I'd like to have. I wish I'd done a few of them differently. But that's besides the point, I suppose. But yeah, the initial ones, I'm really pleased with those because I'm a big fan of the arcade machines. So for me, I wanted to do something that's really arcade style.
Yeah,
and that was my little way of saying, oh yeah, I want to get some arcade graphics on the Amiga. And so that's one of them. And the other bit was the very last set of missions where you're in the underground enemy base.
Yeah.
And I put some sort of alien bits in there, like some cryogenic chambers and things.
Oh, nice.
I just put them in there just for the hell of it. So it was an underground military base. There's always a rumor, isn't there, that the Americans have got captured alien craft and they've had aliens. And I thought, well, let's put that in, just for a laugh. And so I'm really pleased with those because I think I can't remember if they actually did go in the aliens or not, but there was. I'd have to check, but I think I did. I know I did the cryogenic chambers in there, but I can't remember if I did them with the aliens in. I'll have to check that. But yeah, I really like that whole area, that underground base bit. Because it's quite dark and moody.
Yeah,
and I really like that. But overall, I mean, I'm pleased with all of it. I mean, the only level I wasn't 100% happy with was the icy ones. I wasn't too pleased with the way they turned out. I think that if I did them again, I would have done them a little bit differently. But having said that, you can't really go back and re-edit them all.
Yes, that's true.
I'll do an update and do an update, and I say, yeah, this is a new patch to patch the game with new graphics.
I think there would be some people that would love that. To be fair,
it'd be quite funny actually.
Random question, because obviously you must have played the game, but did you ever personally play the game from start to finish while keeping your character alive? And did you kind of try and look after yourself in the game a bit more than your fellow sort of teammates?
I did, yeah. No, I didn't play it all the way through in one stretch. I did play. I have played every mission and completed every mission, but I haven't played it sequentially from start to finish.
Yeah.
I've only done it in fragments when we've been testing. I mean, like I said before, we playing the game. You're testing levels out all the time, and the thing is, the harder ones are all doable. You can complete them. I've read many times where it's, these missions you can't play, and they're really difficult. On the second disc, they get really difficult, but they are. You can complete them, and I've done it. We have done that. So it's just a case of keep trying.
It does get tough, doesn't it?
Yeah. But I think the thing is when when John was designing the majority of the levels, I mean, he had a learning curve he had like a graph which he'd had on a very rough graph, and it was a learning curve, and you'd have like an initial learning curve of the game where you get in and you just like learn how to fire bullets, then you learn how to use grenades, and then you learn how to separate you into groups, and then you get, you know, things like the jeeps or the, you know, the skidoos, and the idea was that you'd get introduced to something, and then you get used to that over, say, a mission, and then you say on a later level, you then have to use that to the best of your ability because you've already used it before. So you don't need to be introduced to it again because you've already had it. So then then use that as a part of a, you know, as part of the skill of playing the level. And that's the way the whole game kind of worked. There's this difficulty curve that went from the start all the way through to the end. And the last levels are quite difficult. I mean, they are hard. You know, some are very, very difficult. I mean, I remember playing them in the office and thinking, God, this is really hard. And then you do it and you think, I've done it.
You feel really,
But the sense of achievement after it is brilliant. You know, you know, and that's that. I think that's testament to the, not just our games, but a lot of the games at the time, because you invested your time and energy into it, and you got rewarded. You know, you felt like you'd really had earned something by completing a level. You know, which I think was of the time. You know, you know, I think a lot of developers at the time were doing the same thing, where, you know, you'd invest time into playing it, and then you'd be rewarded because you've completed it, and that's 100%. Great. It wasn't. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think games nowadays are a bit easier. They kind of hold your hand. Not all games, but a lot of modern games. There's lots of tutorials. There's lots of little help bits here and there. But I agree. The classic Amigas games, I think they really pushed you to your limits. Actually.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they really did, and I think that's of the time. I think we've because we developed from a point where you had the 8-bit stuff where there was no game saves, or you might have had the odd sort of code to type to save your progress. And, you know, we got to the Amiga, and then it was all getting a bit more advanced, but you still didn't have the flexibility that you have now, just instantly saving to the cloud or wherever, coming back to it, you know, it was there, and that was it. I mean, there was a few games that you could have a save disc in, but I think, I mean, Cannon Fodder, you could save the game on Cannon Fodder. But it wasn't like now where you have lots of different save slots and you have lots of different. Like, it was very convenient. It wasn't back then. It was like quite brutal the way you save stuff. It's like load, save, done. So, you know, it wasn't even timestamped. So you think, well, I don't even know when I saved that game. I have no idea.
You know? Oh, fair enough. How about Cannon Fodder 2? I mean, you said you were sick of the first Cannon Fodder, but how soon was it afterwards when you sat down and started to think about the sequel?
Well, I'd never worked on the sequel, believe it or not. No, I'd like to have done, but you know, just to contradict myself from my previous comment, no, I mean, I was working on Sensible Golf, so I didn't. I didn't get to work on Cannon Fodder 2, which is, I mean, all my graphics were in it. They used all my graphics for it, and I obviously got a royalty for that. So, but I didn't work on the second one, which I wish I had really. In hindsight, I think that I'd like to have done. If I'm honest, I'd like to have done.
No, fair enough. Was there anything, I know we're talking about Sensible Golf soon, but was there anything you would have, if you had the chance to put into Cannon Fodder 2 to move the game forward at all? Or is there any areas or gameplay mechanics you would have loved to have brought into it?
My own personal views, I think we should have kept with where the first one ended. You know, I think we should have kept, so almost like it continues on rather than being all new. I think we should introduce all new stuff to it, but kind of start off in one of the, maybe, you know, start off from the underground base where you left the first one and maybe do a rescue mission. You know, I think, you know, because then you're offering options to rescue people as part of the game dynamics, and then take that forward. But I don't know. I mean, it's very, very easy to go back and look at stuff and say, oh, you know, could have done this, could have done that. Yeah. At the time, you know, for reasons that I wasn't privy to, it went the way it did. You know, it had this time travel kind of sci-fi thing, which I personally never really understood. I never understood why it went in that direction. I always thought it should have remained true to the original, and just kind of developed from that and expanded on what that game offered, rather than take it into that strange direction of doing all this weird sci-fi stuff, which I'm really into. I love all that sort of stuff, but I don't think in the context of Cannon Fodder 2 it worked as well as it was probably they thought it would. But,
I mean, I played both, and I have to say, it's the first one was more my cup of tea. The second, don't get me wrong, the second one was fun, but it just seemed more. It's just a better fit, I think, the original kind of sort of soldier kind of sort of style. Was there ever talk of Cannon Fodder 3? I mean, what do you reckon? Could that ever be a possibility? Do you think?
I see. It's really strange because I would love to have done another Cannon Fodder game. I still would. I mean, if someone said to me, "There's a pile of cash, would you do a Cannon Fodder style game now?" I'd say, "Yeah, I'm well up for it," because I there's so much that you could expand upon from the original. I do believe. I mean, John, when Sensible was sold to Codemasters, John was consulting there, and I know he worked on a Cannon Fodder 3 project for them, and that was quite advanced, I believe. I never saw it. I've not seen anything of it, but from what he said, it was quite advanced in terms of the design and the development of it. It was playable, and there was quite a team working on it, and there are people out there who've listened just now who probably worked on it. It was a great shame that project, just got canned. It would have been nice to have seen that come out and to see what been achieved, all those years later. There was that horrible kind of strange thing that they released Codemasters called Cannon Fodder 3, which I from what I've seen is just not Cannon Fodder at all.
No, let's forget about that.
Yeah, but to me, what I did see, that looks like someone's gone to them with a game and said, "Look, this is a game." They said, "Oh, we'll put Cannon Fodder 3 on it and sell it." That's what it looks like to me. But yeah, that's not really Cannon Fodder. But yeah, I mean, I think if we'd have stayed with the Amiga longer. Not that we would have done, because commercially it was dying.
It was dying, wasn't it?
Yeah. Which is a real shame. I think if Commodore, it's all these things are linked. Like with Commodore, Commodore had, I was talking to David Pleasance about this before, and I mean, he's a lovely bloke, David. And he tells you some really, the amount of stuff he knows is just phenomenal. And it's just a shame that his hands were tied with Commodore. And they couldn't have done more. Because I think if that had a bit more life, the Amiga, and it could have got developed, maybe we would, 3D would have come in, but it would have given us a bit more of a smoother transition, and maybe we would have done a Cannon Fodder 3 at some point. But it is what it is, and it's nice to sit here and kind of think, oh yes, could that be nice? Could have done that. Yes.
We need the time. We need the time travel powers from Cannon Fodder 2.
That'd be fantastic.
Sensible golf. I mean, are you a golfer yourself? Is that more your sort of sport?
It's one of those games I've often thought about playing, and I haven't. I've never played golf. Yeah. I've only played, obviously, the old Seaside Crazy Golf, which I do enjoy. Yes. But I've never played proper golf. So I've not really. I've never played it. But Sensi Golf, I was really into that. I really enjoyed working on that. It's just a shame that it never got finished. It was released without being finished. Yeah. And I noticed that there's lots of stuff in the game that I know graphically that wasn't finished, and I wish I'd have had the time to have finished it. But it kind of frustrates me that there's graphics out there that I've worked on that weren't finalised, and they've gone to the duplicators on the disc, and they've got released to the public. That frustrates the hell out of me.
Why was it rushed then? Do you know, Stu? Can you remember why it was pushed out the door quickly? Or?
I think it was purely because Virgin needed it out. I think it was basically the deal that had been signed, and they needed to release the game out for Christmas and to get it out the door. And I think with everything that was going on at the time, I mean, sex, drugs, and rock and roll was bleeding the country dry. I mean, it really was. It was just like this big leviathan of like financial woe that was sitting there over the company, and all the other projects suffered as a result, and Sensible Golf was one of them. I mean, John didn't get involved in it like he would do with normal projects, so his direction on what he wanted the game to be wasn't as much to say it was with Cannon Fodder. So we didn't really get the thing finished as we'd like to have done. And I know that with Jules was working on Cannon Fodder 2 and Sensi Golf at the same time, which was crazy, absolutely crazy. So his devotion to the projects was split between the two. So I don't know. I mean, you look at it and you think, well, it's a nice game, but it's not really up there with the other titles. It's got promise, it's got the potential, but it just never quite achieved it. And don't get me wrong, I mean, when you play it, it plays well. I mean, especially when there's a group of you playing it and you've got like 4 people playing it, it's great. It's a good laugh, but it doesn't have the depth. It doesn't have the silliness. It doesn't have the wackiness that you'd expect, and it certainly doesn't have all the little touches that I thought we put into it. Like, you know, I mean, the classic one, which I've said many times, is the flasher. You know, the little flasher that was supposed to jump out from the trees, and not very often, but he would appear now and again.
Yeah,
and just to put you off, or you'd have like, you know, like rabbits jumping around, or some other little wildlife. Just little things like that, which we never put in. You know, and
I think those little touches make a difference. I believe. I think I agree with you actually.
Yeah, it's just a shame we never.
It is a shame. I mean, I know you didn't personally work on Segs, Drugs and Rock and Roll, but I mean, why wasn't that game finished? It looks ahead of its time. It looks amazing. It looks very different to the usual sort of sensible software sort of game. I mean, was there a sort of day when it was like, this is not happening?
The biggest reason was that the programmer involved with it was out of his depth, and he didn't really do the job that he was paid to do, and it was just one of those things where it just slipped with the programming, and unfortunately, with the cost of the art taking like serious amounts of money, the progress of the art side was way ahead of the programming, and in all honesty, it wasn't. I mean, like, I know what I'm talking about, but you know, I'm not a programmer. I do dabble with programming over the years, but I won't class myself as a coder. But I mean, it was literally a point and click kind of like interactive adventure system which has been developed. Yeah. So it was scripting, and it was like a scripting system. So I you know, from my experience, I mean, most programmers I've worked with over the years could probably do that quite easily. You know, it was quite. I'm not saying it's an easy job, but I don't know. The programming was what really caused that project to fail. Plus the fact that once it got to the point where you know, the finances were getting on iffy ground, they you know, I think, was it one of the companies who was published, they sold to somebody else, and that was it. It just didn't happen. So, and they couldn't get anyone else to publish it because it was very niche. And I think I mean, Virgin would have been the ideal company to have published it, but that didn't happen. So, you know, it's a shame.
I mean, Stu, what was must have been sad seeing Sensible Software kind of. You were in the middle, the period from the real sort of big days, and seeing it slowly unravel must have been quite a sad thing to witness. Is that fair?
It really was. I mean, to give you an example, I mean, when we had our first, when I moved up to Cambridgeshire. When I first got the job with the guys, it was. The best way to describe it is: imagine you have a weekend away with your mates on a bit of a jolly, and you're not off your face on booze, but you know, it's a good laugh. You know, you're having a laugh, but you're doing that all the time. But you're working. That's the environment it was.
Yeah.
Then as you progress through, we relocated to Saffron Walden. Got bigger offices. I think it was over 3 floors. So you had like ground floor, first floor, second floor. And, you know, that was retained for a little while. And then once the Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll started to get bigger and bigger, we had more people in. They needed a whole art department had to be brought in. The place started to get a little bit of a colder feeling. So, you know, I would, for instance, I've said this before, but, you know, I'd go downstairs to the kitchen to make a cuppa, and there'd be people in there I didn't know. And I think, I don't know who you are, you know. And it's like, okay, this place has kind of lost its kind of like, not, I wouldn't say soul, but the warmth had gone. And I thought, well, this isn't the place I used to enjoy working at. So I ended up looking to do something else. You know, which is a shame, you know, but I do wish it had carried on. I do wish we would have somehow survived. And I think it would have been great to have been able to, you know, got over that rough terrain with the company and carry on. But it wasn't to be, you know, it just wasn't to be. But it was a sad time for me anyway, because I'd spent so many good years there. And I made some good friends, you know, I mean, you know, I'm still friends with some of the guys now.
Yeah, that's good.
I do see a few of the guys now. So, you know, it's just a shame when you've got so much energy and effort into something, and then you start to see it unraveling and unfolding into like, you know, this pit of doom, and you think, oh my god, this isn't gonna survive. You know, you just knew, and there's a sense of the place wasn't going to survive. You know, that's what I felt. This isn't going to be around for much longer. So I got out, you know, which I didn't want to do, but I had to. So.
Yeah, it's a shame because, you know, so many great companies have closed down, I think, before their time. It is sad. Where did you go afterwards then? You still worked in games, didn't you, for a good number of years?
Yeah, I mean, what I did is a friend of mine, we did we originally was going to do like a little sort of PC game, and we was going to just sell that to whoever. And we went round and we got a demo running and we got a design going, and we went around a few publishers and tried to get a deal. And we had a few talks with a couple of the big ones. And then Telstar said to us, we'd be like to take your project on, but could you do this as a 3D platforming game? We like the characters, we like the designs, and we thought, well, we were desperate for the deal. We said, well, okay. And I mean, in hindsight, we didn't have a 3D coder, but we thought we can hire somebody, and we did. We signed a deal, and that was Abstract Entertainment we set up, and we had offices in Braintree, and we signed a deal with Telstar, and that was for a game that eventually, it started off as DJ Fresh Adventures in Dreamworld, and then we changed the name to Joe Blow Adventures in Dreamworld, and that was a 3D platform game, very, very, very much like what Mario 64 was.
All right.
But you know, this is before, you know, the N64 had come out. Really, we were working on it, and then the N64 come out. It was like, oh right, okay. But we did that, and that lasted 3 years, and then that went down the drain because it never come out. And then I went back to freelancing and just contracting and sort of consulting. So that was it. But I don't tend to. And I did probably about 10 years full in the industry after that, and then I kind of dwindled into doing other bits and pieces.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a very strange thing, because it's when you've had success like with a big developer, people automatically assume that you're set up for life. Yeah. And that's so not the case, because you still have bills to pay. You still have family to feed, and so often, you know, you find that, you know, people don't want to ask you to get involved with stuff, because I think, well, you know, you're from Sensible. Why would you want to work on this project, or why would you want to work on that project? So it's a very strange thing, actually, because you know, I've had that a few times over the years where it says, "Oh, I didn't want to ask you because I thought you wouldn't be interested." And so no, I'm always interested in looking at projects. You know, it's what I do. I love it. You know, I love all this sort of stuff.
So yeah, like a double-edged sword almost. Would you say that? Like, such huge success. It almost I get what you're saying, Steve. That is a bit weird, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's like somebody who's known for one particular type of thing. I mean, give an example. For years, I was never employed on projects to do anything other than pixel art. Yeah. And it's like, well, you know, I am an artist.
Yeah.
And it was a really weird thing, because people say, "Oh, I didn't know you could do that." It's like, well, yeah, I'm an artist. I can do all sorts of stuff. You know, it's not. I don't just do little pixel characters. Yeah. Because that's what you're associated with, because that's what you've been known for, and it's a really weird thing. You know, it's a very, very strange thing. You know, I mean, I've shaken that off now, because obviously, you know, with my website, I've got all sorts of stuff up there, and I'm trying to upload other stuff as I get time. But it's a very, very unusual thing. And it's quite funny, because about when was that? About 10 years ago, I got really frustrated with it. I was like, no, I can do more than just pixels. It's very strange.
You hate pixels now.
No. I do still love pixel art.
I love it.
You know, but and I'm actually really pleased that people are taking that as an art form for developing their games, because you know, there's so many games out there who've got pixel art, and I think it's brilliant, really cool. Yeah, it's really
love it. I love that sort of 16-bit Amiga sort of Mega Drive SNES look. I love it. What, out of all the games you've worked on, and you've worked on a lot of games, is there one particular title you're just most proud of?
Let me think. This might surprise you, but it's not the sensible ones, actually. From purely from a graphics point, not from the game itself. From a gameplay point of view, Cannon Fodder, because that is just you can play it now and it still plays really, really well. From a graphics point of view, and this is one of my personal favourites, is The Last Starship. I mean, that's one project that I worked on, which I don't know. I mean, and there was another game I did called The Executioner, which some of the level graphics I did in that I was really pleased with. But The Last Starship, I'd probably say, is one of those titles where I just wish we'd have had a good programmer working on it, because I did so much work on that project, and I put so much effort into creating a look, and I designed the graphics so that it was only in 16 color, but I made sure the colors all worked really well together, and you could mix a few of the hues together, and you could all do all sorts of things. And I really wish that game had come out and we'd had a good program at the time to push that. This was done before I joined Sensible, so I think some of those graphics probably got me the job with Sensible. So in some respects, it kind of paid for itself in the time that I'd put into it, but it was just a bit frustrating as an artist to have done something that never really saw the light of day, which is why now it's great that I can upload these graphics to my website and say, look, hey, this is some of the stuff I did years ago. Nobody's seen it. You might have seen a few screenshots in some of the old magazines, but these are the original files. Have a look, and this is what can be achieved in an Amiga. It's just 16 colors. So, but yeah, that's probably the biggest one, I think. The Last Starship. I can't really think of any others, because most of the other stuff is just the sort of just the stuff you do in your day-to-day work when you're working on games. And you do obviously do it to the best of your ability, but sometimes you do something where you put that, it's got a personal thing, and you think, well, I'm just gonna put a little bit extra in for myself because it's my own kind of personal project. But yeah, that's probably the one. But you can check, I mean, these files are actually on my website, so if anyone wants to check them out, they're on there in the galleries, so in the pixel art galleries.
We'll put your website in our show notes, so obviously if anyone's listening now, they can obviously check it out. Definitely. Bit of a crazy question. If you could step inside any of the games you've ever worked on and sort of live there for a day, which game would you choose and why?
Oh wow! Oh, that's a brilliant question. That's a bonkers question.
Is it bonkers?
I love bonkers questions. Oh, that's a very good one. That could be any game from any era, I suppose.
Yeah, that you've worked on. Yeah.
God, of what I've worked on.
Probably not Cannon Fodder, because that's a dangerous place, right?
No, I don't think I'd survive too long, actually. Let's think. I don't know. I would probably say I'm tempted to say Sensible Golf. I'm tempted to say
quite serene, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's quite relaxed. Take your time. You don't die in it. So I could live out my days on a lovely golf course, nice bit of water here, a little pond. And there's a lovely little house, isn't there? And when you go between levels, when you go between courses, there's a little house I drew. So yeah, maybe Sensible Golf actually.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, good one. And then I can finish the graphics while I'm there.
Yeah, in between shots, definitely. In
that kind of virtual 3D painting that you see now with VR. We can paint in 3D with VR. Oh, I'm going to come in here and finish this game off now. Right, wouldn't it?
It's got poetry almost. That's a great answer, Stu.
I'd probably turn it into Tron.
Oh, could you imagine Tron Golf?
Like Tron is one of my all-time faves. So I'd probably end up turning it into like Sensible Golf meets Tron, and there'd be all sorts of things like a recogniser to fly across or something, and get around the course in a light cycle. Yeah, that's a strange idea.
You actually just mentioned Tron. Then is there?
Yeah.
Obviously, how do you get inspired to do with your art? I mean, obviously you've got a brief and so forth, but is there movies or anything inspire your amazing work?
I do. It's very strange because going back before the internet, and this is a thing that I find really strange. Because when you sort of did stuff years ago, you didn't have an immediate source of reference. So unless somebody sent you some files to look at, and I'm talking about actual physical ring-bound files rather than computer files, you would generally look at magazines, books, TV, movies, visit the library. Or if you're a particular art style of an artist you admire, you'd say, I want to be in the style of this guy or that guy or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, if someone says, well, we want to do something in this particular style or what can you do? You can just go immediately to a search engine, go to image search, say blah, 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 and you can pull up a whole list of stuff and you can say, drag them into a folder, say, right, that's my reference. Is that what you're looking for? And they go, yes. And you think, right, that's it. And then you use that as your source of reference for what you're creating. This is something which is very, it's very good, but it's also very frustrating, because I think it's, in some respects, it's kind of lost. You kind of lose your own style. Is there a possibility of losing your own style by doing that? But I don't know. I mean, I do tend to just look at lots of things, and I mean, I have been told I've got a style with my pixel art. I don't know if I've got. I mean, my certainly my general sort of non-digital style is. I think I've got a style with that. But I generally, I mean, when somebody wants me, I just have a look and see what's about there, and then I make sure they say that's what they're after, or I'll do a couple of rough sketches, and then they say, yeah, that's cool, or no, can you change that? But I mean, it's very strange, because I don't think many people understand how hard it was to find source material when you've got the internet at your feet, disposal today. I mean, you just sit there and just go, I want all this, like space art. I want some space art. And you go, yeah, there's endless pages of space art, or I want mugs. I want pictures of mugs, and you think, oh, these are nice mugs. And some have got blue handles, some got red handles, and you've got all these pictures everywhere, whereas years ago you didn't have any of that. You just had to kind of go out there and look for it yourself. So things have changed a lot, and I think it's great. I mean, I do love all the technology today. So it certainly makes creating art a lot easier in terms of the reference material.
Yeah.
It does make it a bit easier.
Yeah, good stuff. Stu, are you a gamer in your own time, and do you have any personal favorite video games? Obviously not the ones you've worked on, but what do you play these days?
Do you know what? I don't actually play that many games these days, and the only ones I tend to play are ones where I can just dip in and dip out quite quickly. I did play quite a lot of pinball games on the Xbox. I used to play that quite a lot. What was the one I used to play? What's the big pinball game on the Xbox? Oh,
I'm not really an Xbox player personally.
No,
so I don't know.
I think it's on the PlayStation as well. It's there's a big pinball one. It's the ones with the I can't remember what it's called now.
I just think of Pinball Fantasies and Pinball Dreams on the Amiga.
Yeah, I used to play them as well.
Great games.
But I don't really play that many games these days. If I do, I tend to load up an emulator and I'll play something on there, like some of the old arcade games. I like playing like Galaxians, Galaga. Love Galaga, and I love Galaga 84, 83 on the PC Engine. I always get confused which one it is. I think it's 84. I love that. It's such a great game. So I do tend to be drawn towards the classic systems. Mega Drive, a big fan of the Mega Drive. Love the Mega Drive. Yeah. Strider on the Mega Drive. Love Strider. What else have we got on there? There's so many games, isn't there? I like Turrican on. I used to play Turrican on the Amiga. That was great. But I don't tend to play that many games these days. Which is a shame, really. I really need to rectify that. I mean, I did have my Neo Geo out the other month, which I'd had in storage, and I haven't got that many games for it. And I was playing a couple of games on that, which I think I put on my Twitter because I thought it was broken. And it wasn't. It just needed a clean. So I was so relieved that was it, because I thought, oh no, this is going to be a nightmare to fix. But thankfully it worked, and I was happy again. So.
Oh man, Neo Geos are great.
It is, and that's one of those machines. One of those machines I would love to have worked on. I would absolutely love to have worked on a Neo Geo. I'll tell you another game I did used to play a lot, and I did play that. Earlier the year, I did Atari Jaguar out. And I played Tempest on it, Tempest 2000.
Yes,
which is the game to own, isn't it? On the Jag.
I've got it. I've got it myself. I love the Jaguar.
Yeah, I do. Do you know what? I love the Jag as well, and I'd love to have done more on that. I mean, financially, it's a pain because you wouldn't make no money off of it at the time, because they didn't sell enough to basically make it worth your while. But I loved the machine. I thought it was a great machine. From an artist's point of view, it was a really great machine. It was lovely. So,
and do you know what? Yeah. Cannon Fodder and Sensible Soccer are pretty good on the Jaguar. I have to say, they're good conversions, good ports.
Yeah, the thing is, I did actually work on the Sensi Soccer on the Jaguar.
Oh, did you?
I did the port for that. A mate of mine got the deal to do the conversion, and he phoned me up and he said, "Look, I've got a deal with doing Sensi Soccer." He says, "Would you be interested in doing the conversion?" I said, "Of course I will."
Nice.
Yeah. And the thing, conversions are one of those things where I think you have to be respectful of the original. And so many games that were converted, I think people who developed them, they hand them over to a company to convert them, and then the conversion company just do their own thing with it. And you think, you don't stamp your mark on it, convert it, but don't change it. Enhance it if you must, but don't change it. And there's so many games which convert to other systems where I don't know why, but people feel like they need to meddle and fiddle with things, and you think, don't do that. And I'm very particular with the artwork. I did, what's one of the games that were converted? I think it was, what was it? Was it Cannon Fodder? Somebody converted it to, I don't know if it was the Jaguar version, but one of them was converted and the graphics were all kind of, it looked like somebody took a blur filter to some of the graphics and they'd enhanced the colours, but it was done really badly. And I thought, well, why did they do that? And for me, I had no control over that. So, it's frustrating. So, but I'd love to have done more of that sort of stuff. I'd love to have done more conversions. Financially, it's not possible because you can only do so much in a day.
Yeah.
So, But the Jag is a lovely machine, isn't it? I do like the Jag. I do ramble a bit, don't I? I do apologise.
Oh, I love talking about the Jaguar. The thing is, I agree. I think the Jaguar, Tempest 2000, that's a good example of pushing the console to its limits, but not enough games pushed it to its limits.
Yeah, and there's obviously the Jag SD card thing coming out now.
I can't wait.
Which is Retro HQ's doing, which is fantastic.
I've actually interviewed him actually, so we're got some information about that scene. It's been brilliant. I can't wait.
I love watching all that stuff. I've been watching what he's been doing, and I'm like blown away by what he's been doing with it. Because for me, collecting Jaguar games can be quite expensive.
Oh yeah.
And I've got quite a few Jag games. At the time I bought a load when it came out, but I never had AVP. I always wanted that, never had that, and I think that goes for crazy money these days.
It does.
So just to be able to play some of these games without actually wanting to go out and buy them all, because I know it sounds like it's dodgy piracy and all this, but it's years ago. So it's like, as a collector, you think, well, I just want to play some of these games, and it's just nice to be able to play them on real hardware, not on an emulator. So I think what he's doing is amazing. I'm looking forward to seeing that when it's out, and getting one.
So Stu, you don't have any issues with people playing your really old sort of Sensi games on EverDrives and so forth, or is that?
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. I think in hindsight, it would be nice if the games industry was like the record industry, where you could earn serious coin from your old titles and live off the royalties, because that's what all these old rock stars do, don't they? They do. They have a couple of hits and the royalties are flooding in continuously. Unfortunately, the games industry was never set up like that, and it's too late to change. It's too late to change that because everyone is so used to emulation, playing games from just downloading the ROMs. One ROM site shut down, another one springs up. Most people have downloaded all the ROMs anyway. Yeah. So I think, for me, I don't have a problem with it. I think unless you're talking about serious volume that you're going to lose. Yeah. But it's too late. People are so used to doing it now. It's done. But I have to say, I do like the idea that, as a preservation, system, it's great to have all these ROMs available, because these people who've converted all these games over, they're preserving history. They're preserving all this. I had some discs that are dead. I had some Amiga data discs, and they're dead. They got corrupted. They're useless, and there's loads of stuff. You think, well, these magnetic discs, they don't have a long life.
No, that's true.
And if they're not stored at the right temperature in the right environment, blah blah blah, they're gone, and all that data's gone. So all these ROMs and games that are out there, it's preserving it, and that's a good thing in my book. That's a very good thing.
No, I like that answer, Steve. Just a couple last minute questions. Do you still have all your old Amiga sort of computing gear and old games and notes and so forth? Or is that long run?
No, I do actually. I've got. It's funny, I've got. I was talking to Neil from Retro Man Cave about this at the revival a month. Because he'd done some videos for the recapping the Amiga 4000, and he's really knowledgeable in all this sort of stuff. And I was talking to him about it. I said, I've got like some 4000s, and I've took the batteries out, and I've got to recap them. But I've got two 4000s. I've got an Amiga 2000. I've got an A1000. I've got a 1200, and I've got a 500 plus.
Nice.
And I've basically kept all the machines I've ever used since I started doing video game graphics.
Yeah.
And I've even got my old VIC 20 as well. I've got my VIC 20. I've got my Commodore 128. I've got them all. And I should really sell some of the Amigas because I'm never going to use them. I booted one up the other day, and I thought, well, am I ever going to use this again? I thought, not really, probably not. So I think what I might do is just sort of fix them up and then maybe sell them. But I have got all my old data discs. I've got most of my old files. It's funny, I've got like some of the designs for the Sensible game Have a Nice Day, which was also called Office Checks. I've got the level maps for that, all the level designs for that. I've got some of the design specs for that. I've got a lot of the Cannon Fodder notes. I've still got loads of those. What else have I got? Got most of my discs. The only things I haven't got, there was a transition when Sensible was being sold to Codemasters, and I lost some of my work files. It was on one of the other Office Amigas, which wasn't mine, and I wish I'd have backed them up because they've gone now. So I don't know where they've disappeared. So they've probably gone to a hard drive sitting in storage somewhere. But yeah, for the most part, I'm pretty good with backing up data. I've got most stuff, yeah, and I think you have to, especially this, now with these old machines, you don't know how long they're going to last, especially the hard drives and the floppy disks. They could die tomorrow, and you've lost all that work, So, but again, it's great that there's people out there who do it. I mean, there's loads of people out there who quite happily sit there and take your discs and say, look, I'll convert it for you, because it's data preservation. And I'm quite happy to share the files when that happens. So it's good. It's good stuff.
Good stuff. Yeah, brilliant, Stu, man. I love chatting to you today. It's been so great learning more about your career. It's absolutely a pleasure.
I do like to have a good old chat now and again.
I've got one more final question. It's a bit more of a bonkers one, but
that's bonkers. It's fine. That's fine.
I mean, if you could share a few drinks with any video game character from any game, who would you choose and why?
This is the one I answered on the other thing, on the written one, isn't it?
You did, so you can give me a different answer if you want.
No, do you know what? I'm going to stick with that answer of the character from Space Harrier because I used to play that when it came out in the arcades, and I played it. We was at a family holiday to Skegness, and Butlins in Skegness, and they had a full size Space Harrier machine with the chair, and I played it to death on holiday, and that game kind of got embedded in my brain, and it was like, wow, that Space Harrier was just awesome at the time. And I've always thought it was such an amazing world to inhabit, the Space Harrier world, all these lovely colours and stuff. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if you could like take him down the pub? I don't even know what the character is. Do you know the character's name?
I don't know, top of my head.
Guy with the big gun and under his arm. Sit him in the pub, give him some like really, really strong cider, the real kind of arty stuff, like 20% or whatever it is. Yeah. Give him some of that, and then get him a bit sort of merry. Say to him, toilets are over there. When he goes off to a go-loo, nick his gun, go out for a nice drive on it. Go around the streets, and you got his gun. It's lovely. I'd give that a go.
Oh man, I mean, he'd be angry, man. He'd be after you.
I'll just come back and shoot him.
Yeah, definitely. Space Harrier 3. It's a great game, isn't it?
It's great. I mean, I've got. It's a lovely game, and I've got. I want to get it on the Saturn because I know the Saturn version is supposed to be really good, isn't it? On Sega Ages, and I keep meaning to get that because the Saturn's got a very, very good version of Space Harrier. And I've only played it back in the day when it came out, but I never actually bought it, so I need to get hold of that at some point.
Do it, yeah. I want to play it now as well. Actually,
it's a good game. It's a good game, and all those Sega games are really good. I think they had such a good feel about them, didn't they? Like your Outrun, Space Harrier, 100%. And then was it Power Drift they did, which was
yeah. One of our Arcade Attack crew. I think that's one of Keith's favourite games. He loves Power
Drift.
Is it? Yeah, it's one of his favourites. He loves it.
But it just shows off their technology. I mean, back then that technology was like mind blowing.
Yeah.
Because you think you'd sit on like an Amiga in D-Paint and you'd scale your brush and it'd go chug, 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 then you'd scale it and you scale it down. You think, oh, that's pretty cool. But you've got a machine that can do that in real time, and not just on one, it'd be doing like zillions of objects. And it'd just be doing all the sprites will be scaling, and you think, wow. So, you know, back in the 90s, that was mind-blowing seeing that kind of tech. You know, but it's a lovely thing to look back on and say to remember those feelings, seeing that technology come out at the time.
Yeah,
it's great. Yeah. As you can probably tell, I still get quite excited by it all.
Oh, Steve, look, we love it. We love anything retro game. We love Sega. We love we love Sensible Software, Amigas. We're massive fans. Look, it's been such a real pleasure. You know, we really appreciate the text.
No worries, mate.
But the pod, I know our listeners are going to love this. So thank you so much.
No worries, anytime. You know, feel free to give me a shout if you need to talk to me again on anything, and drop me any questions. Likewise, if anyone's on Twitter and they want to drop me a message or anywhere, you know. If I see the message or see the tweet, I'll reply. I don't always see them all because sometimes I get quite a few bits and pieces. But if I do, I do try to reply to everybody. So,
what's your Twitter name again? Is it at
Stoo Cambridge? I believe it's just Stoo Cambridge. Yeah, just Stoo Cambridge. So, and
you got your website is it stoocambridge.com?
Yeah. I try to keep it very simple so everyone knows. It's mainly for me, so I can remember, you know, because I used to have my other website was Hobecker, and people couldn't understand what that meant. I said, so I thought, well, I'll change it to my name. You know, I'll have my name as my website, and just keep it as that, so it's easy for everyone to remember. And but I mean, Twitter is where I usually hang out these days. I don't really do Facebook at all these days. I've got my Facebook page set up, but I never really go on there. So if you add me as a friend on Facebook, chances are I won't see it because I just don't go on there anymore. I might post on there occasionally as a public post, but Twitter is where I'm usually at these days, and Instagram as well a little bit. But the same thing is. You can see me on my Instagram's the same, Stoo Cambridge. I believe it's Stoo Cambridge, isn't it? Nice. So, yeah.
Well, look.
But all those links are on my website, so you can see them on the top of my website as well. So if you want to check them out, they're all on there.
Good on you, Steve. You're a real gentleman, and love hearing stories today.
It's been great talking to you. It's been really good.